Today is a great day. It is windy out, it is snowing, it is freezing, and none of that matters because today kicks off the first day of building out the miter station, which is going to go on this wall right behind me. Now, why that has me so excited is that if you watched the video I made a couple weeks ago, I gave a detailed tour of the shop in which I talked about the progress that we've made thus far and sort of our plans for the future. I highly encourage you to watch that video. It'll put this video into better context. Anyways, we've made a lot of progress in the shop so far, and yet we still have a lot of things that aren't necessarily junk, but they don't really have a place to go. And so adding more cabinet space and storage capacity is definitely essential to make this a functioning workshop. For today's video, I want to walk through the plans that I made on Sketchup because there are still certain questions that I have, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to address them yet. And I think showing the 3D model and sort of the solutions that I've come up with thus far is going to give you a sense of what's going through my head. As far as building out things, I want to start with the base carcass, at least on one side. And since the priority seems to be getting things put away, it might make sense to completely finish one side, getting everything put away, and so that when it comes time to build the other side, depending on what I have left to put away, if that has any special requirements as far as width of shelves or drawer space or anything like that, I can make those changes on the fly. I'm not going to drag on for any longer, so let's just get started.
I'm here at my desktop PC where you can see the SketchUp model I threw together of what I think the miter station could look like. Planning this out, I wanted something that would be really accessible, easy to use, and modifiable for the future. Since I mentioned in the intro, this shop is going to continue to evolve, and I want to be able to make changes on the fly without feeling like it's going to require too much work. As you can see, I didn't go into the details of making specific drawers since we are going to kind of build those on the fly to fit the specific things as needed. And there's also no general layout up top yet. We still don't know if we're going to do upper cabinets or have a tool wall. And yeah, but the main purpose of this was sort of get an idea of how much lumber we'll need and kind of look at it and see if this is something that we would like. There are 6 feet of base cabinets on either side, meaning that in theory you can cut at least 12 foot down stock since the center of mass won't go over the end. And for 99% of the cuts we're going to do in the shop, I don't see us doing anything very long. And so having this layout as compared to having like 8 feet of base cabinets on this side and 4 feet on this side, this just is going to leave a better user experience. What else? We actually don't even have the miter saw bought yet, so we're going to have to wait until it's bought until we have this specific dimension figured out. I mentioned in the intro, the storage capacity is actually the greater need for right now, and so that's why we're focusing on the base cabinets. I don't want to drag on too long, and I think I covered everything I wanted to talk about, so let's just jump into the time lapse of me actually starting to cut down stock. The first pieces I wanted to cut out were the sides of the base carcass, and I wanted to have as little waste as possible. Working with that 3/4 material is pretty difficult, it's big and heavy, and so I made a sort of jerry-rigged outfeed table that will definitely need to be a project in the future, but the rigged up solution I had seemed to work. I also had to cut out the toe kick using a basic carpenter square and a jigsaw. So that all went pretty smoothly. So I was left with the 4 pieces.
All right, I cut out the 4 sides of the base cabinet. As you can see, there's toe kick down there. These sit up at 34.5 inches tall, which is standard base cabinet height. So if you had a kitchen, this is what you would expect. I'm assuming I'm going to be adding 2 3/4 inch plywood as the countertop. So that would make it standard height. Now, I'm a taller guy, and so I considered the idea of adding a couple more inches just so it'd be a little bit easier working space. But I'm not going to be the only guy working in here. And although it would have been nice to have a little bit more drawer capacity with that extra height, what we miss out on here will be made up as far as wall storage goes. So I'm going to have to start cutting out dados and little slots for some of the side rails to go. So we'll show that next. As I was preparing to cut the first series of dados, I gave some more thought into how I want to assemble the cabinets and the overall strategies I could use. And I came to the conclusion that I need to amend my strategy a bit. I am mostly lacking three things in the shop right now. The first of which being a lot of clamps, the second being a large assembly area, and lastly, I don't have the time that it would take to do a lot of different dados with glue ups. Because of that, I'm going to make two different changes to how I'm going to assemble these. The first one is, instead of using a dado slot joint, I am going to instead use a Kreg jig with pocket holes and glue. Obviously, that's not going to be as strong as a dado, but looking at my lack of clamps, that's going to make it a bit easier. The second thing I'm going to change is that instead of having 4 of these, create one side of the miter station, so 1, 2, 3, 4, with 3 separate bays for drawers. Instead, I'm going to have 2 of these with a long bottom, long top rails, and then have floating dividers in between. That is going to make the ease of assembly go a lot better. And I'm just sort of playing the cards I'm dealt right now, and that's going to create a better overall build for me. In the future, if the other variables change, obviously I will amend my building style, but I'm just working with what I have available.
The next piece I cut out was the bottom base carcass, and in order to do that, I also had to get a little creative with how I wanted to feed it through, seeing as the side I was holding was actually the bottom. And after that, I wanted to use the Kreg jig to make the pocket holes, and in order to do that, I had to add a little bit of scrap wood to that jig in order to make it easier to drill into the larger sheets of plywood. There might be better shots of that in the future. But after getting the Kreg jig built, I marked out and drilled the pocket holes accordingly.
Okay, as the time lapse showed, I cut out the bottom 6-foot base of the cabinet carcasses, and then I added the pocket holes along the bottom. Then I took the sides and I added this strip which I screwed on, which will be a temporary kind of clamping mechanism, so that if you pretend like this is the bottom of the shelf, I can add glue, set it in place, and then use the pocket holes to screw into that, and this will keep it from moving. I just applied the glue. Now I got to line this up. All right, this is the other side. So this is the bottom. In order to get the fronts to line up, I'm just relying on the concrete floor, so I hope that's good enough. One thing I do want to get in the future is a nicer applicator. Those glue buddies. Alright, got a little bit of squeeze out. I'm going to probably add some bracing along this back. This is the back of the cabinet. Back here, and then the toe kick, so that when I add the spacers that go here and here are the dividers, they don't sink down when they have weight put up on them.
Next, I began to cut out the 3-inch wide cross members that would be installed on the top of the cabinet carcass to give it its bit of lateral rigidity and overall shape. As you can see, I added a clamp and spare piece of wood to keep the pocket holes from moving the pieces as I screw them in. This also gives you a good shot of the extra platform that I added to the Kreg jig in order to make screwing the pocket holes a little bit easier for the bigger panels. The last pieces to be installed were 3.5-inch strips that will act as both the toe kick and bottom support for when the center dividers go in, so that when the shelves and everything else gets installed and that weight gets distributed on the center dividers, it helps transfer the load into the floor without the bottom of the base cabinet sagging.
Okay, this is the 6-foot base carcass without the 2 center divides. I think I'm going to call it quits for today, and this will wrap up part 1. There were a lot of challenges that were presented due to the size of this base cabinet. As you can tell, I can stand on this due to both the cross braces on the bottom, the front one obviously acting as the toe kick. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I'm still toying with the idea of putting a 1/4-inch sheet of plywood back here, but since this is all going to be drawer space, I don't really see a need for it. There's a little bit of lateral movement back and forth, just ever so slight, where that 1/4-inch backing would help that a little bit, but I'm still not sure if it's necessary and if it's just going to be wasting material. Once we get this in place, it's not likely to move, and adding these center dividers and weight and the countertop to it is going to add to its rigidity. I think besides the dividers, the base carcass is done. I hope you liked the video. I'm really excited to see what the rest of the parts entail. I'm hoping to have these center dividers to divide it into equilateral parts, as well as start getting some drawers built so we can start increasing storage capacity. Some of these sheets have a little bit of bow to them, so that's going to present some challenges on making sure things stay square and plumb, but we'll have to address that as it comes up. Thanks for watching. Like the video, subscribe. I hope to see you again soon. Thanks.